this be working? Fucking time. Fucking time. Fucking time. Shit's annoying. And I gotta add the filters so it doesn't sound too loud. It's just tedious bullshit. I don't know why I have to continuously do this. I don't know what I gotta figure out to where I'm not doing this every goddamn time. Shit. All right. If you can hear it, I am a little sick, but we are gonna push through today. No worries. We got Nick talking about Larry Ellison, and then we got Myron breaking down Venezuela and why the U.S. is in Venezuela. So we're gonna watch those clips and react to them in real time, of course. But yeah, hope everybody had a great day. Today is Monday. Let's get right into it.
The bitch shaking it, showing it. You this, you that. We laughing at them together. Oh! So stop treating these mother like they mean something.
Let's go to TikTok.
All time on this channel. We've talked about U.S. Venezuela for a while. You guys know my position. I don't like the fact that we're being so aggressive with Venezuela. You know, I voted for Trump. One of the main reasons I voted for Trump in 2024 was to avoid conflict and wars. Okay, and these escalations of Venezuela, quite frankly, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Smash the like button. A lot of you niggas bitching on YouTube about let's cover politics, but we only got 1,000 likes, but we got 3,000 plus you guys in here. Yo, smash that goddamn like button. We should be at 2,000 likes. I don't get paid to be on bitch-ass YouTube. So I'm doing this as a favor for a lot of you guys. I have a lot of shit to cover. The death of mainstream media. We're going to cover...
On Christmas morning, if your kid wakes up to this game stick, it's gonna be their favorite present. Let me show you what this thing...
What else? Yeah, we got a lot of shit to cover, bro. Obviously, the Australian terrorist attack, all that stuff. So, niggas need to be patient, okay? Bitching on YouTube. Yeah.
Treatise. Sun Tzu wrote that over 2,000 years ago in his military treatise, The Art of War. And while the art of war is best known for, well, actual warfare, many of its lessons have been applied to negotiations, diplomacy, and politics in general. Now, what if I told you that the US military buildup off the coast of Venezuela is an implementation of this very lesson, a strategic performance of strength at a time when much of the world perceives the US to be in decline? With the rise of China on the global stage, the failure of NATO to defeat Russia in Ukraine, the inability to destroy the Islamic Revolution in Iran, the challenge of defeating Hamas in the besieged Gaza Strip, and the rapid inflation of the dollar. The American empire has never appeared weaker, regardless of the fact that most of its military strength remains intact.
And guys, the name of this channel is called Propaganda & Co. Good channel. I like, I've collabed with him a few times, been on his channel. Check him out, man. Good stuff.
And that its GDP is still the highest in the world. The perception held by many is that the US is an empire in decline, and that its fall is only a matter of time. And this perception isn't just felt internationally, it's felt domestically by Americans as well. This overall feeling of decline is what led to the election of Donald Trump, who ran on a very simple message: make America great again. The of perception isn't just felt internationally, it's felt domestically by Americans as well. This overall feeling of decline is what led to the election of Donald Trump, who ran on a very simple message: make America great again. The message itself implies that America is no longer great, and the people desperately want it to be so.
We will take back our country and we will make America great again.
Ever since Trump's re-election a year ago, the US has been desperately trying to reassert itself all around the world. In his first 6 months in office, Trump joined Israel in bombing Iran, escalated tensions with Russia by continuing to arm Ukraine, sanctioned half of the planet, threatened to annex both Canada and Greenland, and renamed the Department of Defense to the War Department. All of this is connected to Trump's campaign promise to make America great again. But this is more than just propaganda for a domestic audience of idiot plebs. It's also an attempt to remind the world who's actually in charge. In its latest effort to flex its strength, the US has set its sights on its South American enemy, Venezuela. The US has amassed a massive naval fleet off Venezuela's coast and has implemented a no-fly zone over the country. All things point towards a major US attack on the country. So the question currently on everyone's mind: is Trump actually serious about going to war with Venezuela? In this video, we will explore the US regime change plans for Venezuela and reveal what's at stake for the American empire. Because this isn't just another regime change operation by the United States. This is do or die for the American empire. Because the US finds itself in a rapidly evolving global economic system that it created but has already started leaving it behind. So this isn't business as usual for the military-industrial complex or the Pentagon. This is an operation that could determine the next world superpower for the next century. Whenever the US prepares for war or regime change, whether it's Iraq, Libya, Iran, and now Venezuela, the first strikes are always in the information space. The articles come before the airstrikes. Headlines propagandize the public, frame the narrative, and manufacture consent for whatever follows. To accurately predict which way things are going, I like to expose myself to all the propaganda. I've learned to read between the lines and see the intent behind the article. This is how I was able to predict the Israel-Iran war months before it happened. A great tool that helped me do that was Ground News, an app and website that pulls in information from everywhere all at once and compares how different outlets, whether it's left, right, foreign, or domestic, are framing the same story, adding context context like factuality and ownership so you can see the full picture. Let's take a look at this headline, for example. U.S. military conducts 22nd strike on alleged drug boat in Eastern Pacific, killing 4 people. Ground News allows us to compare the bias across 237 articles reporting on this story. They summarize the bias comparison for us. Left-leaning outlets frame the military strike with skepticism. Conversely, right-leaning coverage asserts the targets were narco-terrorists from a designated terrorist organization. Now let's assess the accuracy of Ground News' bias comparison by taking a look at the way this right-leaning platform, Breitbart, reported the story. U.S. military strike kills 4 narco-terrorists, destroys drug vessel in Eastern Pacific. Just as Ground News told us in the bias comparison, the language that the right uses is decisive and justifies the strike. There is no room for doubt. But Ground News takes us even deeper by letting me quickly see who owns Breitbart and how factual their article was. This information quickly tells me why the story is being presented in this way. And if you watch my channel, you already know this information is essential, which is why Ground News is such a valuable tool for me. In my opinion, everyone should be processing their information through a tool like Ground News. And now you have a great opportunity to do so. Ground News is giving my viewers a special offer of 40% off. To understand why the US is now threatening war with Venezuela, we first need to explore some basic history. Venezuela is a very unique country in South America. It carries the legacy of Simon Bolivar, the revolutionary who fought to liberate Latin America from European colonial rule. Bolivar did not just want independence for Venezuela. He wanted a united, sovereign South American continent, one strong enough to resist outside empires. That vision alone put Venezuela in ideological conflict with the United States, which has long viewed the Western Hemisphere as its sphere of influence under the Monroe Doctrine, a policy that essentially states this half of the planet belongs to us. Now, combine that historical and political legacy with Venezuela's vast amount of natural resources. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves on Earth, more than Saudi Arabia, more than Iraq, more than the United States. We are talking about at least $18 trillion in underground wealth, and that is just their oil. This does not include their gas, gold, iron, or other natural resources that are mostly untapped. For most of the 20th century, Venezuelan oil was controlled by a small elite aligned with US corporations and Western interests. The profits flowed upward into foreign banks and private pockets, while the majority of Venezuelans remained in poverty. In the 1970s, Arab states imposed an oil embargo in response to Israel's aggression against Egypt. This triggered a global oil shortage that sent prices skyrocketing. The Venezuelan elite benefited tremendously from this crisis, but it wouldn't last long. The sudden rise in oil prices pushed major economies into a recession, which forced many of these countries to seek alternative energy sources. This shift led to what is known as the oil glut of the 1980s, where global oil supply far exceeded the demand, causing prices to collapse to record lows. Because the vast majority of Venezuela's national revenue came from these oil exports, and because most of these profits flowed into the hands of a collaborating elite, the country was completely unprepared for the fallout of the oil price crash. The enormous profits from oil exports in the 1970s convinced the political elite that Venezuela could take on massive loans without consequence, the assumption being that the oil revenue would always be there to pay them back. But when oil prices collapsed in the 1980s, the Venezuelan government found itself in a predicament. They were now facing a severe budget deficit, runaway inflation, and a rapidly accelerating debt spiral where new loans had to be taken to pay off the old loans. At the time, Venezuela had international reserves of $300 million and a debt of $34 billion, with a poverty rate of 70%. It was a complete shit show. The Venezuelan government was trapped between the need to modernize their economy and pull their people out of poverty, while also addressing the debt crisis before it could further spiral out of control. International lenders like the IMF and World Bank offered to step in with even more loans, but on the condition that the government liberalize the economy and implement austerity measures. Simply put, austerity is when governments slash spending by reducing or outright cutting budgets for public services and subsidies. This is done either to balance the budget or to pay off the interest-bearing loans owed to institutions like the IMF or World Bank. But austerity isn't just cutting public spending. Sometimes, in order to appease the banks that now effectively own the economy, nations are required to liberalize the economy, or in other words, give up state control of key aspects of industry and hand them over to private corporations, usually with Western ownership and investment. Venezuela's president at the time, Carlos Andrés Pérez, won his second term by campaigning against austerity, promising to protect social programs and maintain subsidies. But once in office, he reversed course and implemented the very austerity measures he had condemned. Entire sectors of the economy were privatized, social spending was slashed, and most importantly, government fuel subsidies were completely dismantled.
No matter what's on your plate or on your mind, the UPS store wants to guarantee this holiday season has more. Let's go! With our pack and ship guarantee, your items arrive safe or your money back. For every way we holiday, visit the UPS store today.
The road home is the most beautiful journey. Capture every precious moment.
The most controversial part of the reform package was the removal of these gasoline subsidies. Subsidies that had kept domestic fuel prices far below international rates and even below production cost. To understand how drastic this was, you need a little bit of context. In oil-rich countries like Iran and Venezuela, government subsidies push gasoline prices to extremely low levels. For example, in Venezuela today, a gallon of gas costs just 8 cents. That's right. 8 cents. Meanwhile, where I live in Florida, that same gallon costs at least $2.85, which is 35 times more expensive. Now this sounds wonderful until you realize that the average salary per month in Venezuela is just $8. So gasoline has to be that cheap. Otherwise, people can't get around and the economy cannot function. So in a country where 70% of the population at the time was already living in poverty, the removal of these energy subsidies didn't just raise prices. It effectively paralyzed the poor and pushed an entire population to the brink. This sparked a nationwide uprising known as El Caracazo, where the government responded by massacring protesters in the streets for rejecting US-backed austerity. The political order that had governed Venezuela for decades had literally collapsed in legitimacy overnight. Born out of this chaos was a passionate military officer turned politician, Hugo Chavez. Chavez didn't come to power offering small reforms. He came offering revolution. He was Simon Bolivar reincarnated, and his fiery, energetic, passionate vision for Venezuela brought him to power. One of the first things he did was nationalize the oil industry, not in name, but in practice, forcing the state oil company PDVSA to stop operating like a private corporation serving Western energy markets and instead redistribute oil wealth to the Venezuelan people through healthcare, housing, education, and food programs. He called it the Bolivarian Revolution, explicitly linking his movement to Bolivar's dream of a sovereign, united, independent Latin America. Like Bolivar before him, Chavez didn't just want to liberate Venezuela from United States control. He wanted to free all of South America from the global neoliberal economic order. And that is how and why the conflict between the US and Venezuela became inevitable. Because when a nation with the largest oil reserves on Earth declares that its resources belong to its own people, not to Exxon, not to Chevron, not to the IMF, the World Bank, or Washington, that's not just disobedience. That is a direct threat to the American imperial strategy in the Western Hemisphere, a threat to the petrodollar, a threat to US geopolitical dominance, a threat to a 200-year-old doctrine that says Latin America must remain subordinate. And that, not democracy, not human rights, not corruption, not drugs, is why the United States has spent the last 2 decades trying to overthrow the government of Venezuela. Now, while it's true that the United States wants to look strong in the face of perceived weakness, this aggression towards Venezuela isn't just performative propaganda. The real reason Washington has now rapidly accelerated its regime change plans for Venezuela is because the global economic order is shifting fast. For the last 80 years, the United States has dominated the world through two main pillars: the dollar and control of global energy, primarily oil and gas. These two things are inseparable. You see, the dollar is strong because oil has exclusively been priced and traded in dollars globally. This is known as the petrodollar system. But that system has slowly been unraveling over the last few years. Countries like China, Russia, Iran, Brazil, South Africa, basically the BRICS nations, are actively building an alternative global financial system, one that does not rely on the US dollar in order to trade for commodities like oil and gas. China has already been signing oil trade deals in their own currency, the yuan. For example, just a few months ago in September, Saudi Arabia and China settled an oil transaction in the digital yuan. Even India has been purchasing Russian oil despite the sanctions using the Chinese yuan. To many, this is the beginning of the end of the dollar's hegemony. So the United States now has one urgent strategic priority: re-establish control over the world's largest remaining oil reserves in order to prevent more sales in non-dollar currencies. Those reserves are, guess where? Iran and Venezuela. Trillions of dollars of oil, enough to determine the future of global energy pricing, determine the world's reserve currency, and control over the Chinese economy, sits under governments that are not aligned with Washington. Even worse, Venezuela has been strengthening economic ties with China, Russia, and Iran, the three main challengers to US hegemony. Beijing has already invested heavily in Venezuelan infrastructure and oil extraction operations to the tune of $67 billion. Russia provides military equipment and intelligence support, and Iran advises Venezuela on how to bypass sanctions and protect against refinery sabotage. So from the perspective of the US national security establishment, Venezuela had crossed from disobedient to strategically dangerous, and time was quickly running out to prevent them from joining BRICS. Because if Venezuela, China, and the entire BRICS bloc began to finalize oil trade outside of the dollar system, it would have undermined the petrodollar, weakened US global financial power, accelerated the shift toward a multipolar world, and removed the economic basis of the US empire itself. So again, this is not about democracy, corruption, or even drug trafficking. This is about preventing global power from changing hands. So when the US positions its navy outside Venezuela today, it's not simply flexing for its domestic audience of idiot plebs. It is defending the core operating system of the American empire. Whoever controls Venezuelan oil in the next decade will have leverage in this new global economic order that is rapidly taking shape. That is why war is suddenly on the table.
Do not get a consolidation loan until you see this. Hey, Mario Lopez here, and if you're thinking about getting a...
There have been many opposition figures over the years that the US has officially recognized as Venezuela's legitimate leadership. The most recent is Maria Corina Machado, who has been going viral recently, not only because she very controversially won the Nobel Peace Prize for her stated work to transition Venezuela from a dictatorship to a democracy, but also for her viral clips where she promises to give Venezuelan resources to the United States.
We will open Venezuela for foreign investment. I am talking about a $1.7 trillion opportunity, not only in oil and gas, which is huge, and you know that the opportunities, because we will open all upstream, middle stream, downstream to all companies, but also in mining, in gold, in infrastructure, power. We will open markets, we will have security for foreign investment, and a transparent, massive privatization program that is waiting for you.
Do you support US military strikes on the territory of Venezuela as part of what you call a process?
I believe that the increase in pressure and the escalation that's taking place is the only way to force Maduro to understand that it's time to go.
Simply put, she's a sellout, which essentially confirms what this entire conflict is about. Oil, money, the dollar, China, the future of the US empire. Now, to be clear, the US isn't just suddenly attempting regime change in Venezuela. They've actually been trying for the last 20 years. Shortly after Hugo Chavez took power, Washington began imposing sanctions on Venezuela, and those sanctions have been gradually intensified ever since. The sanctions, combined with poor economic policies by the Venezuelans themselves, has pushed the country into a deep crisis. Hyperinflation, violent riots, and multiple coup attempts. After decades of sanctions and covert meddling, the US now plans to turn up the heat to its most extreme point. Just like they did with Iran, the US will test the strength of the Venezuelan regime by assassinating key figures and delivering strikes on infrastructure. The United States recently deployed its largest and newest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, which is a carrier capable of launching and supporting over 75 aircraft on its own. And with the recent order to vacate the skies over Venezuela, Trump has already set the stage for aerial strikes deep inside the country. Only time will tell if Venezuela can survive this showdown. But one thing is certain: the United States is very serious, and it will continue to escalate as far as it needs to in order to overthrow the Venezuelan government. So what do you think? Let me know in the comment section. Before you go, I want to give a very special shout out to the sponsor of this video, Ground News. So click the link and let's continue to slice through the propaganda together. Groundnews.com/
Golda Meir. Okay. Warfare from
again assert itself all around the world. In his first 6 months in office,
know why now? We pretty much got fucking hit with the nuclear blackmail, which Israel does all the time. Okay? The reason why we attacked Iran is because Israel literally threatened to nuke Iran if we didn't step in and destroy Fordo. For those of you that don't remember, Fordo is a nuclear facility that's hidden within a mountain. Okay? And in that mountain, deep inside that mountain, they did not have the bunker buster bombs, okay, to be able to penetrate into that nuclear facility. Only we did. And basically Israel said, yo, if y'all don't fucking, drop the bombs and destroy that thing, we're going to hit them with a nuclear bomb. Now, who did this come from? This came from John Carricow, former CIA officer, from one of his sources. And I believe it because this is not the first time that Israel has used nuclear blackmail to get us to do what they want. So I 100% believe it. Okay? 100% I believe it. Because this is what Israel does, guys. This is what they do. They did this back during the Yom Kippur War as well. Back in 1973, okay? Golda Meir, you know what? Fuck it, bro.
Every single time, every single crime, every single lie.
History lesson for you niggas real quick.
Every single hour, every single day, every single night. Early light. I know it's hard to believe it's the whole.
All right, so let's give a quick little history lesson for you niggas, okay? Because a lot of you guys might not know what the fuck I'm talking about. We got a lot of new viewers here. All right, so the Yom Kippur War basically was a sneak attack, okay, that Israel got hit with by the Arab nations, okay? And Israel was absolutely going to lose this conflict, right? So Golda Meir, who was the prime minister at the time, okay, contacted your boy, Richard Nixon, this guy. Okay? And told him, look, if you do not assist us, we are going to fucking bomb and we are going to hit these guys with nuclear bombs. Okay? These Arabs. Now, obviously, Nixon saw the wreckage that the nuclear bomb did at the end of World War II. So what did he do? He was like, okay. And they gave one of the biggest fucking airlifts in American history to save Israel. Okay? Because Golda Meir was 100% going to drop nuclear bombs on these Arab countries that attacked Israel. Okay? So I tell you guys this so that you guys understand that there is precedence, there is prior threats like this, nuclear blackmail is what you call it, these threats have been made before by Israel if they don't get what they want from us. Okay? And Israel is not a part of the they're not a part of the nuclear proliferation treaty. Okay, they're not a part of it whatsoever. Right? So in other words, they have an unacknowledged nuclear program, an illegal nuclear program if we're going to be candid. Okay? And they got these nuclear weapons via theft of American technology and uranium. Okay? It's a very long story, but I cover this in detail with Corey Hughes. If you guys want to go ahead and watch it, thank you very much, Amos. I cover this in detail with Corey Hughes when it comes to John F. Kennedy. One of the chief reasons why John F. Kennedy was assassinated was because of Israel's nuclear program. Okay? And Israel's nuclear program was built upon stolen information and uranium from a nuclear facility called NUMEC out of Apollo, Pennsylvania, also known as the Apollo Affair.
Every single time, every single crime, every single lie, early lie, every single hour, every single day, every single night.
All right. Long story short, this facility had very highly enriched uranium, which was stolen and illegally smuggled back to Israel to help them create their nuclear program in the 50s and 60s. After John F. Kennedy was assassinated and Lyndon B. Johnson took over, Lyndon B. Johnson suspended all nuclear inspections that Kennedy wanted to enforce. And what ended up happening was Israel was able to create a nuclear program in the late 60s. They successfully tested it. And had them. And when the Yom Kippur War kicked off in the early 70s, Golda Meir, as an act of aggression to let the Arab world know, and the United States, that they had nuclear capability and they're willing to use it, she purposely mobilized nuclear assets above ground that were captured by Soviet satellites to telegraph that if you guys keep going, we're going to hit you with these goddamn fucking nukes. That's what prompted Richard Nixon to take action and assist for fear of a nuclear war. Fast forward, okay.
Of natural
one, inflation was through the roof, and that oil embargo fucked.
And implement costs at least $2.85, which is 35 times more expensive. Now this sounds wonderful until you realize that the average salary per month in Venezuela is national.
Put in the leadership that they wanted, the Shah. That Shah had a more secular worldview, secular government.
Country into a deep crisis of sanctions, hitting
Part two.
aircraft carrier.
It's not going to be good, bro. I think it's going to be like a Vietnam Part 2. It's not going to be bueno whatsoever. Remember, guys, as the invading military, you have a significant disadvantage, right, of the defending country. This is why, despite the fact that Russia is superior to Ukraine in every way, they're having a difficult time, with Ukraine. It's taken what? Guys, we're about to be on what, 4 years? 4 years almost. Literally 4 years almost. So the defending military always has a significant advantage over the invading military. Every single time. Guys, smash that like button, by the way. We literally have 1,800 likes, but 3,200 of you guys in here.
So Skydance acquires Paramount in August 2025, and now they become Skydance Paramount, a major media conglomerate. And again, all funded by Larry Ellison. So now you've got Skydance Production, you've got Paramount Hollywood Studios, Paramount Plus, Showtime, CBS, Nickelodeon, MTV. All these properties are under one roof. This is now the new kid on the block, a major media conglomerate. Now, it's worth pointing out that this is owned by David Ellison. And David Ellison is a trust fund kid. In reality, this is part of Larry Ellison's extended portfolio. So owning Oracle, he owns a lot of the data that's on the internet. He also now owns a significant chunk of the media. Going back to Larry Ellison's identity, it's important to understand he is ethnically Jewish, not religiously Jewish. In spite of this, he is one of the major private backers of the Israeli Defense Forces, the Israeli military, the IDF. He's given them tens of millions of dollars over the years. He's a close personal friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. He owns the largest island off the coast of Hawaii that's owned by a private individual. Last summer, he let Bibi Netanyahu vacation there with his family. So the Ellisons, they're not just a Jewish family. They're not just one of the richest families in the world, but they're also American oligarchs that are basically in bed with the Israeli government, with the Israeli government's prime minister, its leader, and also its military. And they have been for 20 years.
Come on. Kind of weird, right?
That happened this year. Larry Ellison is a close friend and a supporter and a backer of Donald Trump. Obviously, Donald Trump became the president again this year. And one of the major trade deals that Trump has made earlier in the year with China saw the Chinese parent company ByteDance transfer ownership of TikTok from Beijing to Washington. After the U.S. Congress banned TikTok last year, it was an act of Congress that did it in 2024, TikTok was officially banned in January. When Trump came to power, he made this part of his negotiations with the Chinese state. Among other things, it was about trade, it was about semiconductors, computer chips, critical minerals. TikTok was also part of this deal. Donald Trump aggressively pushed Beijing to force the Chinese parent company ByteDance to sell TikTok to a consortium of American companies. And earlier in the year, that deal was finalized. And the details of the deal are this. TikTok is being sold from ByteDance to a consortium of private American companies. And the private American company that will take the biggest interest, the biggest commercial and financial stake in TikTok is Oracle.
If you're involved in a car accident in Georgia, you'll need to report the accident to your insurance company. A car accident lawyer can guide you and protect you from things that
Larry Ellison's software company. But it doesn't stop there. Not only does Larry Ellison get the biggest chunk of TikTok out of any of the other private companies like Andreessen Horowitz, for example, that will own TikTok. He has the biggest chunk. He will also be hosting all of the American data that is on TikTok. So if you have a TikTok account, if you have it downloaded on your phone, all of that data that TikTok receives from its American user base, it is being hosted by Oracle. But there's more than that too. Not only does Oracle have the largest financial stake, and they're hosting all the TikTok data, but Oracle alone is going to get access to TikTok's algorithm. And Oracle will receive the proprietary algorithm from ByteDance that is owned by TikTok, and they will manipulate the algorithm and change it for its US user base.
This is
David creates a production company called Skydance. Larry, the father, backs the merger between Skydance and Paramount. So now, inside of Larry Ellison's family portfolio, you have the Skydance production company, the Paramount production company, Paramount Plus, Showtime, Nickelodeon, MTV, Comedy Central, CBS News. This is a deal paid for by Larry Ellison. The original company, paid for by Larry Ellison. But in addition to that, what is also part of his portfolio is TikTok, the largest financial stake out of any of the private companies that are part of the consortium that owns it, all of TikTok's data, and the proprietary algorithm. That is a media empire. And you would call this in the private sector, in business terminology, this is what's called vertical integration. Vertical integration. And what that means is that every step of the supply chain is controlled by one company. The media is created by a studio. So they go into a literal studio with cameras and lights and a set and all of that in Hollywood, and that is owned by Larry Ellison. Paramount and Skydance have the actual studio. And then once they make the content, they will license and distribute it. That is also owned by Larry Ellison. They control the licensing of it. They control the distribution of it to the various networks and other companies. They also then now own the television stations that will air the shows, the television networks, the streaming platforms that will distribute them so it gets onto Paramount Plus, Showtime, and they even now own the social media company where the content inevitably will wind up also and where it might be advertised too. So every step of the way, Larry Ellison owns it.
Come on, like this, how is this even like possible? I think this should be forbidden in our country, to be honest. I'm not like a pro for like to forbid things, but this is crazy. This is too insane. I don't have to explain you that the media is very powerful nowadays. I think the media is like the most powerful things we have at this point. And if this is all owned by one organization, by one group of people, then it's like, this is not good, because these people, they can just like influence all the opinions of like the people who watch the media. And believe me, I don't even watch the mainstream media myself, but of course.
Working across teams is tough,
but Asana helps you handle it. Asana AI can spot roadblocks and assign work to keep everything on track. That's how work gets handled. Visit us at asana.com.
The television network. The studio, the licensing, the distribution, the television networks, the streaming channels on digital, and also even a social media company too, including its data, where it's literally hosted on the back end, its algorithm, and in terms of the governance of the company too. That's what we're talking about. And this is all owned by a pro-Israel that has a personal relationship and friendship with the Prime Minister of Israel. Again, Netanyahu's family vacations on Ellison's private island in Hawaii. Larry Ellison has donated more money to Israel's military than any other private citizen. Larry Ellison even convinced Arnon Milchan, a Hollywood producer, to drop his Jewish lawyer so that Netanyahu could retain him for his defense in his corruption trial. That's the extent of their relationship. There's another dimension to this too, which is the role of government, which is the role of government lobbying. How did Larry Ellison come to acquire TikTok? Because of the intervention of Donald Trump. Twice. It was Donald Trump in 2020 who raised the issue of Chinese ownership of TikTok. You might remember this. It wasn't a new conversation where Washington talked about banning TikTok in the United States. That conversation started 5 years ago when TikTok was growing rapidly in the United States the first time. And it was in 2020 when the deal was, for the first time, all of the U.S. data owned by TikTok would be hosted on Oracle. That happened 5 years ago. It was in Trump's second term. Again, his close personal friend Larry Ellison. It was in the second term that Trump, as part of a wider trade deal between the United States and China, had China compel ByteDance to sell TikTok, at least its American business, outright to Larry Ellison's company, Oracle, and to transfer the algorithm exclusively to Oracle so that it could be retooled for its American side of the business. That happened through government. That happened through Larry Ellison's personal connections to President Trump and his support of the Republican Party through lobbying, I'm sure through other political connections. Earlier in the year, as I said, after Skydance acquired Paramount, they then started to make a play for Warner Brothers. They offered them a lot of money. And after Warner Brothers received interest in Paramount trying to acquire their studio, they just put it up for sale. They put the whole business up for sale. They said they wanted to receive multiple offers. They were going to hold an auction for it. And then enters Netflix. Now Netflix wants to buy Warner Brothers. In other words, the interest from Skydance Paramount triggered an auction. Now Warner Brothers is simply going to sell itself. The owner of Warner Brothers wants to sell it outright. And this is where it brings us to today. It looks like Netflix and Warner Brothers have inked a deal. Netflix is going to acquire Warner Brothers for, I believe it's $72 billion. And now Skydance Paramount is going to try to mount a hostile takeover. This is a story about this today from NPR. It says, quote, Paramount Global has sweetened its offer to acquire Warner, offering an all-cash deal valued at $108 billion to take over the parent company of HBO, Warner Brothers Studios, and CNN, among other notable properties. It would appear to significantly outstrip the deal, worth $83 billion, that Netflix and Warner announced last Friday, although that agreement is solely for Warner's streaming service and studios, not its other assets. If that deal were to go through, CNN and other cable channels would be spun off. Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison and his son David, the movie producer and founder of Skydance Media, took over Paramount this summer. It is the parent company of CBS, Paramount, the Paramount Plus streaming service, and more. Combining with Warner would let them create a Hollywood behemoth to take on Netflix, the world's largest streaming service. The Ellisons are also mindful of other major movie and TV streamers, particularly Amazon, Apple, and Disney, which bulked up a few years ago by acquiring most of Fox's entertainment assets. Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos told investors Monday that he had anticipated a counterbid from Paramount and that he wasn't fazed. The deal, he said, was done. Larry Ellison is a donor, informal advisor, and friend of the president. David Ellison made 2 key hires at CBS, specifically in its news division, to ensure that it will be perceived as less adversarial to Trump. A conservative former think tank chief has become its new ombudsman to review complaints. And Barry Weiss, founder of the Free Press, has taken over the news division as editor-in-chief. Paramount's previous leadership paid $16 million to settle a lawsuit filed by Trump against CBS News that legal observers described as flimsy. The Netflix announcement stirred instant opposition from a handful of U.S. senators in both parties. Trump was non-committal in remarks about it on Sunday. So that's where we are today.
But wait, do you know what I don't understand? How is it possible that Donald Trump actually supports this? Because with TikTok, he was super worried. He was scared that it was like in the hands of the Chinese government and we should bring it to the
Skydance Paramount launched a bid to take over Warner Brothers. Again, their control over Hollywood would be absolute. So Warner Brothers put it up for auction, and Netflix outbid Paramount. They did better. They offered $82 billion for half of the company, or a part of the company, for its studio and for its streaming service, not its other assets like the cable news channels and other networks. Now, as it stands right now, Warner Brothers is selling itself to Netflix. Netflix says it's a done deal, open and shut, they have it. Here is the rub, however. In order for the deal to go through, it will need regulatory approval from the Trump administration. It will have to be approved under certain antitrust provisions by the Trump government. And although it's supposed to be nonpartisan, the bodies that adjudicate this, they're going to listen to the influence of President Trump. So really, it all comes down to how Trump feels about this. And let's think a little bit about the calculus here. When Skydance and the Ellison family acquired CBS, the first thing they did is they hired Barry Weiss to be the editor-in-chief. Barry Weiss is a lesbian. She is self-identified as a liberal. That being said, she has center-right politics. Her website, The Free Press, is a center-right website. And as soon as they took over CBS, they started making moves that would satisfy the president. Now, Warner Brothers owns CNN. Trump hates CNN. So the Ellisons are telling Trump, as a matter of fact, they called him up today. Larry Ellison called up Trump today and said, if Netflix acquires Warner Brothers, this is bad for competition in the media. They have also told Trump, if we acquire CNN, we're going to make it more Trump-friendly. we're going to make it more conservative. So if you're Trump, you get to decide. Does Netflix get Warner Brothers and CNN, or does Skydance Paramount and Larry Ellison? Well, Larry Ellison is a pro-Israel. Larry Ellison is a Republican booster. And Larry Ellison has promised Trump that if Trump allows Skydance Paramount to acquire Warner Brothers, that they will put a pro-Trump or a more moderate person in charge of CNN. This is the lobbying that goes on behind the scenes. But it doesn't begin and end there. At the same time that Larry Ellison is making an appeal to President Trump, he's also making an appeal to the shareholders of Warner Brothers. Because, of course, Warner Brothers is a publicly traded company. So Larry Ellison is taking the offer to the shareholders and telling them that the leadership of Warner Brothers is making a mistake, that they're going to offer more money. The shareholders will make more profits if they accept the offer from Skydance Paramount. They're trying to get the shareholders to vote in favor of that deal. And again, what would that look like? If the Ellisons are successful, they will own Skydance Production. They will own Paramount Global, which includes all those aforementioned properties, including CBS. And then on top of that, they will own Warner Brothers Studios, HBO, HBO Max, CNN, VH1. They'll own HGTV, Discovery Plus, the Discovery Channel. The list is endless. And on top of all that, they're going to own TikTok.
Bro, wow. If you actually think about this, it's insane, right? And again, I can repeat myself 3 times in this video, but how is this actually possible in a democracy? I don't know how this is possible because first of all, it's like we all know the media is so powerful. The media is super powerful nowadays. Just look how everyone is scrolling on their phone on social media the whole time. And if you just own the media, you have so much power. I don't have to explain you this, but I think it's actually like crazy kind of scary if like many of these very powerful media sources are like owned by one organization because for example, they can influence people, their opinions. They can censor other opinions as well. So I think this is not good. I think
A chill day today. Fucking sick as shit, but we shall get past it. We will be live Wednesday. Hopefully I'll feel better. Trying to think. If you have anything you want me to react to, always let me know. Just send it to my DMs, and I will definitely try my best to get to it, to react to it. Also, if you ever want to come on the show, let me know. I haven't said that in a minute. But if you ever come on the show, let me know, because I have no problem with debating. Love having conversations with people. But yeah, nice chill stream today. Make sure you guys have a good rest of your day, and don't get sick. I'll see y'all boys later. Peace.
The bitch shaking it, showing it. You this, you that. We laughing at them together. Oh! So stop treating these like they mean something.
Let's go to TikTok.